As of today, April 20, 2026, the Islamic Republic of Iran is navigating a landscape of unprecedented internal fragility. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must look beyond the sporadic protests and examine the fundamental collapse of the Iranian social contract. The economic reality for the average citizen in Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz has moved from a state of struggle to a state of absolute impossibility. In the first quarter of 2026, the Iranian rial experienced a catastrophic and irreversible devaluation. We are now seeing inflation rates that have stabilized, not in a sense of calm, but in a sense of permanent hyperinflation, hovering consistently above 75%. This is not merely a number on a central bank ledger, it represents the total evaporation of the middle class. The Bazari merchant class, which has historically been a pillar of stability for the regime, has effectively turned its back on the clerical leadership. They are no longer closing their shops in protest. They are closing because they can no longer afford to restock their inventory. The internal security apparatus is also showing signs of structural fatigue. Reports from within the country suggest that the lower echelons of the Basij and the regular police forces are facing their own internal crisis. When a security officer's monthly salary can no longer purchase a single week's worth of basic protein for his family, the ideological loyalty to the state begins to fray. This domestic pressure is the primary driver behind Tehran's aggressive external posturing. The regime is attempting to export its internal chaos, using nationalist fervor and regional conflict as a desperate distraction from the fact that the state can no longer provide the basic necessities of life. We are witnessing a nation where the fear of the state has been surpassed by the fear of starvation. This shift in the collective psychology of the Iranian people is the most dangerous development for the leadership in 47 years. Moving to the maritime front, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz has evolved into a sophisticated game of electronic and physical attrition. Since the military escalations in February 2026, the nature of Iranian naval strategy has shifted fundamentally. We are no longer dealing with conventional naval maneuvers. Instead, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has deployed a vast network of AI-integrated, autonomous swarm vessels. These low-cost, high-intelligence units are designed to overwhelm the Aegis defense systems of the international coalitions currently patrolling the region. The strategic objective for Tehran in 2026 is controlled instability. By holding nearly 20% of the world's petroleum supply at metaphorical gunpoint, they are attempting to force a geopolitical concession that they could never achieve through traditional diplomacy. However, the international response has also evolved. We are seeing the first large-scale deployment of quantum-resistant sanctions and advanced cyber blockades. This is a form of warfare that remains largely invisible to the public eye. International task forces are now targeting the digital fingerprints of Iranian oil tankers, rendering their transponders useless and their financial clearinghouses inaccessible in real time. The risk premium currently priced into global energy markets is not a temporary spike. It is a reflection of this permanent technological friction. Even when no shots are fired, the mere presence of these autonomous swarms and the constant cyber engagement between the IRGC and Western naval assets keeps the global economy in a state of high alert. For Japan, Europe, and the broader global market, this means that energy prices are no longer dictated by supply and demand, but by the daily fluctuations of a digital shadow war in the Persian Gulf. The complexity of this environment means that a single algorithmic error or a miscalculated drone strike could trigger a global inflationary wave that would dwarf the shocks of the 1970s. The third and perhaps most critical pillar of the 2026 crisis is the fracturing of Iran's clandestine financial lifelines. For over a decade, Iran survived through a shadow empire of ghost tankers and offshore banking hubs, primarily centered around its relationship with Beijing. However, in the spring of 2026, this relationship has reached a point of extreme friction. China, facing its own domestic economic recalibration and the threat of severe secondary sanctions from a unified Western front, is no longer willing to act as Iran's unlimited financial backer. Our internal analysis shows that the ghost fleet, the hundreds of aging tankers used to move Iranian crude under false flags, is being systematically dismantled. Advanced satellite surveillance and AI-driven maritime tracking have made it nearly impossible for these ships to operate without detection. Consequently, Iran is being forced to sell its oil at unprecedented discounts, sometimes as much as 50% below the Brent benchmark, just to maintain a minimal flow of liquid currency. This massive revenue loss has created a funding drought for Iran's regional proxies. From Hezbollah in Lebanon to the various militias in Iraq and Syria, the axis of resistance is feeling the pressure. These groups, which were once highly disciplined and centrally funded from Tehran, are now fracturing. As the money stops flowing, these proxies are becoming rogue actors, engaging in local criminal enterprises and independent military actions to secure their own survival. This decapitation of financial command means that Tehran is losing control over the very forces it created to project power. The risk in 2026 is no longer a centralized, Iranian-led regional war, but a chaotic, multi-front fragmentation where dozens of armed groups are fighting for survival in a power vacuum. This is the hidden reality of the 2026 realignment, an empire that is not just retreating, but literally running out of the cash required to sustain its influence. In conclusion, the Iran we are observing in April 2026 is a state that has reached its structural limits. The convergence of a domestic uprising fueled by hyperinflation, a maritime stalemate defined by autonomous warfare, and the collapse of its secret financial channels has created a perfect storm. For the global citizen and the strategic investor, the takeaway is clear. The era of strategic patience is over. We have entered a period of managed collapse. The volatility we see in the energy and financial markets is the sound of a decades-old regional order breaking apart. As we move forward into the remainder of this year, the critical indicators will not be the speeches from the leadership in Tehran, but the black market exchange rate of the rial and the operational status of the Sino-Iranian energy corridor. The map of the Middle East is being redrawn, not by diplomats, but by the harsh realities of economic and technological isolation. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive. Stay vigilant, watch the data, and prepare for a year of profound transformation.